Hey, you. You're finally awake.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Yes, we all seem to love the NES around here, so let's talk about some more underrated games. These are games which may not make your top 20, because you've always got the Marios, the Zeldas, the Turtles, but there are plenty of games which don't get the spotlight shined on them. As always, this is not a definitive list of all the underrated games, and if there's ones I need to talk about, put them in the comments below. If you really think I deserve it, please hit that like and hype button, as that is what turns this from a little side project into hopefully one day my full-time job. You can also hit the subscribe and notification bell to be told when new videos are coming out, and we've also got the weekly podcast which hits episode 200 tomorrow, and you can also join the Smut Squad Discord, and the link is in the description below. Right, let's get into it, shall we? Some underrated NES games, part 3. The Immortal. While it's often dismissed as a frustrating game, the Immortal is acting like the king of the 8-bit gothic noir. It was a 16-bit experience trapped in an 8-bit box, pushing the NES towards a dark, mature style that few developers dared to touch. It didn't want to be your friend, it wanted to be an atmospheric trial that respected your intelligence. You play as an elderly wizard descending into a sprawling, trap-filled dungeon to find your mentor. It was an isometric adventure that blended logic-heavy puzzles with brutal one-on-one zoomed-in combat. Famous for its trial-and-error deaths and its shockingly violent animations that pushed the boundaries for Nintendo's censorship. The Immortal is a masterpiece of dread-included detail. It offered a level of immersion and technical sophistication that was years ahead of its time. Most NES characters move in stiff, 2-frame loops, but the Immortal used rotoscoping style animation that gives a wizard a heavy, fluid and realistic gait. When you swing a sword or cast a spell, the movement has a kinetic weight that makes the world feel grounded and dangerous, and remains one of the most visually impressive games on the hardware. Before Dark Souls made it a trend, the Immortal told its story through the world itself. You stumble upon a war between the goblins and trolls that is actively happening around you, and you're not the centre of the universe, just a witness to it. You find notes on corpses and clues in debris, requiring you to piece together the lore of the dungeon to survive. In the era of colourful mascots, the Immortal was unapologetically grim. It didn't just have monsters, it had political betrayals, ancient horrors, and gruesome death scenes. Seeing your wizard's flesh melt off or a goblin's head explode was a forbidden thrill that proved the NES could handle mature, high-fantasy storytelling. The game just didn't reward fast reflexes as much as it rewarded observation and logic. Solving a puzzle, like using a spider egg to clear a path or navigating a light-sensitive room, required you to think like a wizard. It treated the player like a capable adult, offering a thinking man's adventure in a sea of twitchy shooters. The soundtrack is also a masterclass in tension. Instead of catchy bops, the music is a series of low, rhythmic drones and haunting minor key melodies. It uses the NES's sound trip to create a feeling of being watched from the shadows, making the silence between rooms just as terrifying as the combat. And every item you find in the Immortal is precious. Using a scroll or a potion at the wrong time isn't just a mistake, it could be a dead end for your entire run. This created a high-tension survival horror vibe where you have to weigh the risk of every action, making the eventual victory feel earned in a way that few 8-bit games could ever match. The Immortal is underrated because it was a Western-style PC RPG masquerading as a console game. It traded instant fun for deep, atmospheric immersion and a sense of genuine mystery. If you'd approach it today as a dungeon survival simulator rather than a standard action game, you'll discover a bold, technical marvel that was decades ahead of its time. Felix the Cat. Oh my god, it's 4 in the morning and I'm talking about Felix the Cat. Released late in the NES's life cycle, Felix the Cat is often overlooked because it arrived when everyone was busy moving on to the Super Nintendo. However, it is a masterpiece of that vibrant variety, taking the basic platforming formula and injecting with a level of polish and toy box fun that makes it one of the most satisfying games in the console. The Professor has kidnapped Felix's girlfriend Kitty, well, that's an original name, and demands Felix's magic bag of tricks as a ransom. Felix, being a cat of action, goes on a world-spanning rescue mission instead. It's a classic side-scroller with a twist. Felix's abilities change based on how many magic tokens you collect. The hook here is all about the transformations. You start off with a simple punch, but you can quickly upgrade into tanks, airplanes, submarines, and even space shuttles. Felix the Cat is the masterpiece of constant escalation. It understands the best part of the game is feeling like an unstoppable force of nature, and it hands you the keys to the kingdom from level 1. Unlike Mario, where you get big or shoot fire, Felix has multiple tiers of upgrades for every environment. On land, you go from punching bag to a magician, to a car, to a giant tank, to an absolute nuclear warhead. Sorry, I just made that last one up. In the air, you go from an umbrella to a hot air balloon to a biplane. Each form feels distinct and powerful, making the gameplay loop feel fresh every time you pick up a token. And because it was released in 1992, Hudson Soft knew exactly how to squeeze every drop out of the NES. The sprites are massive, and the colours are vibrant, and the backgrounds are full of personality. Felix himself is expressively animated. His idle animations and scared faces capture the classic cartoon charm perfectly. A lot of NES games are famous for being Nintendo hard. Felix the Cat is opposite. It's breezy, generous with extra lives, and makes you feel like a god. While some critics call it too easy, its lack of frustration makes it the perfect palate cleanser game. It's pure joy without the controller throwing rage. And the controls in Felix are some of the tightest on the system. Whether you're swimming, flying, or driving the tank, the movements feel snappy. There's no momentum sliding like in Mario or stiff jumping like in Castlevania. It's a smooth experience that shows a master level understanding of 8-bit physics. And the game moves at a breakneck pace. 1 minute you're in a forest, the next you're underwater, then you're in the snowy mountains, and finally you're in outer space, because of course you are. The game never lets you get bored with a single gimmick, constantly swapping your vehicle and environment to keep the magic bag surprises coming. The power-ups also are tied to a heart meter that slowly drains over time. To stay in your tank or plane, you have to keep collecting milk and tokens. This creates a soft urgency that keeps you moving forward without feeling as punishing as traditional countdown timer. It turns the game into a fast-paced hunt for the next fix of magic. That sounds like crack. Felix the Cat is underrated because a hidden gem buried under the hype of the 16-bit era. It is polished, colourful, and incredibly fun victory lap for the NES hardware. It doesn't try to reinvent the wheel, it just makes the wheel look like a giant tank and let you blast through enemies with a smile on your face. Low G-Man, the Low Gravity Man. In a library dominated by heroes who jump a standard 3 feet in the air, Low G-Man was a weird experimental outlier. Developed by Kid and published by Taxon, it's a game that ignored the Mario playbook entirely. It swapped the usual jump and bonk rhythm for a high-flying tactical combat system that felt more like a prototype for modern action platformers. It's a masterpiece of anti-gravity ambition. In the future, a robot manufacturing plant has been taken over by an alien force. You are Low G-Man, a soldier equipped with a gravity-defying suit and a unique EM, electromagnetic weapon. It's a side-scrolling game where you don't kill enemies by shooting them. Instead, you freeze them with your EM gun, then use a spear to finish them off from above or below. Your jump is huge. You can leap almost the entire height of the screen, changing the way you navigate every level from horizontal running to vertical climbing. Low G-Man is a masterpiece of subversion. It takes everything you know about the NES combat and flips it upside down, rewarding players who think 3 dimensions ahead. Most NES heroes have a kill button, but Low G-Man has a pause button. Your main gun only stuns enemies, turning into temporary platforms. To actually defeat them, you have to jump over them and thrust your spear downward or upward. This creates a rhythmic tactical combat loop that is far more engaging than simply mashing an attack button. The low G in the title isn't just for show. Your jump is so high that the screen often struggles to keep up with you. The freedom allows for non-linear exploration. You can skip entire sections of a level by simply leaping over the intended path. It feels like you're playing a game with cheat codes enabled, except the game was designed to do it. Low G-Man was Grand Theft Auto in an 8-bit sci-fi. You can find various vehicles, from hopping mechs to flying ships, and use them to tear through the levels. If an enemy is piloting a vehicle, you can freeze them, kick them out and hijack it for yourself. And for a 1990 NES game, this level of player agency was mind-blowing. And because you can jump so high, the bosses in Low G-Man are massive. You aren't just hitting a weak point on a sprite, you're often scaling a giant mechanical colossus, freezing its limbs, and jumping from piece to piece to reach its core. It feels cinematic in a way that very few games of the era could manage. Beyond your spear and EM gun, you have access to loads of sub-weapons like boomerang, bombs, and force shields. You can swap these out on the fly, allowing you to tailor your loadout to specific platforming challenges or enemy types. It adds a layer of Mega Man light strategy to the frantic action. And the game has a distinct cyberpunk look. The backgrounds are filled with rusted pipes, flickering computer screens, and industrial machinery. The colour palette is muted and metallic, which combined with the driving high-energy soundtrack gives the game a cool factor that stands out from the bright, bubbly platformers of the early 90s. Low G-Man is underrated because it refuses to play by the rules. It's a game about verticality and tactical freezing in a market that just wanted more Contra. Remember that. It's a bold, technical experiment that successfully reinvented how a character moves through an 8-bit space. If you want a game that feels completely different from anything else on the NES, then this is your hidden gem. Contraforce. Originally intended to be a standalone game called Archound, Konami slapped the Contra brand on it at the last second to boost sales. And because it didn't play like a traditional run and gun, it was shunned by fans for years. However, viewed today, it's a masterpiece of cinematic ambition, pushing the NES to its absolute breaking point to deliver a squad-based tactical action movie in 8-bit form. Forget aliens and futuristic jungles, this is 1992 Neo City. A terrorist group has kidnapped a government official, and the C-Force, a task force of 4 specialists, is sent up to clean the streets. It's a side-scrolling and occasionally top-down action game with a heavy emphasis on destructive environments and character swapping. You have 4 distinct characters, Burned, Smith, Iron and Beans, each with their own unique weapons and movement speed, and you can switch between any of them at any time via the pause menu. Contraforce is a masterpiece of hardware defiance. It tried to do things that the NES simply wasn't designed to handle, resulting in a game that felt heavy, loud, and incredibly ahead of its time. In 1992, most shooters gave you one guy and one gun. Contraforce gave you a tactical unit. You have Mr. Burns, not that one, the balanced leader, Smith, a long-range sniper, Iron, the heavy weapons tank, and Beans, the demolition expert who can crouch walk. Choosing the right soldier for a specific boss or platforming section adds a layer of depth that traditional Contra games lack. The most impressive part of the game was the destructible environments. You can blow up crates, bridges, and even parts of the background. It's one of the first NES games where your weapons felt like they were actually affecting the world. Blasting a hole through a platform to drop down an enemy was a next-gen concept delivered on the 8-bit console. And you don't just swap characters, you can actually summon another member of your team to fight alongside you for a limited time. You can assign them tactics like covering your back or jumping when you jump. It's essentially a co-op mode for people playing alone, a feature that won't become standard in gaming for another decade. The game felt like a playable version of Lethal Weapon or Die Hard. The soundtrack is a collection of high-energy, bass-heavy tracks that differ from the alien themes of Contra. The urban settings, harbours, skyscrapers and construction sites gave the game a grounded 90s action personality that is incredibly charming. Taking a leaf out of Gradius, the game used a power-up bar. As you collect briefcases, you move a cursor along the bar at the bottom of the screen. And you can choose when to claim an upgrade, whether it's a faster run speed, a landmine or a rocket launcher. It rewards survival and strategic planning over just grabbing whatever icon flies across the screen. Now, critics often bash the game because it slows down significantly when the screen gets busy. That's not really Contra style. However, for many fans, this bullet time effect actually makes the game's brutal difficulty manageable. It gives the game a heavy cinematic feel, as every explosion feels like it has an actual mass because the console is working so hard to process it. Contraforce is underrated because it was a victim of its own brand name. It wasn't the Contra people expected, but it was a revolutionary tactical shooter that experimented with physics and squad mechanics years before they became mainstream. It's a glitchy, flickering, glorious mess of an action game that shows just how far Konami was willing to push the NES. Toki. Known in Japan as Juju Densetsu, this port of the 1989 arcade cult classic is often overshadowed by giants like Mario or Adventure Island. But look closer and you'll find a masterpiece of Spitfire precision. It's a game that takes a bizarre premise, a muscular warrior turned into a slow-moving fireball-spitting ape, and it turns into one of the tightest, most rewarding action platformers on the system. The jungle wizard Dr. Star kidnaps Toki's girlfriend and transforms Toki into a primitive ape. To get his humanity back, Toki has to fight through hordes of prehistoric mutants. It's a run and gun when the run is more of a power waddle. Toki moves slowly, but he can fire projectiles in 8 directions and perform high-precision jumps. It's all about the spit. I didn't even know if that's PG. You collect power-ups that change your breath into triple shots, flamethrowers or massive megabolts. You can describe Toki as a game of deliberate design. In a genre that usually rewards twitch reflexes, Toki rewards pattern recognition and positioning, making it feel like a thinking man's arcade game. Many late-era NES games relied on cheap defs to extend play sessions. Toki's different. While it's challenging, every enemy placement and projectile path is meticulously telegraphed. It's a game about learning the dance to level. When you die, you rarely feel cheated. You just feel like you just need to adjust your strategy by a few pixels. Toki is one of the most expressive sprites on the NES. Whether he's wearing a football helmet for protection, putting on flippers for underwater stages, or pulling a disgusted face when he takes damage, the character has a soul that many generic 8-bit heroes lack, and it captures the weird charm of the 80s perfectly. Because Toki is a primate, he can climb vines and pipes with ease. This adds a vertical layer to combat, as you'll often find yourself hanging from the ceiling, aiming diagonally downward to take out a cluster of enemies. It breaks up the standard walk, right and shoot rhythm found in games like Commando or Hikari Warriors. The bosses in Toki are massive, grotesque and wildly creative. From a giant floating head that belches fire to a mechanical mammoth, each encounter felt like a mini-event. They require specific strategies and rhythmic dodging that pushes the NES's processing power to the limit without the game breaking slowdown seen in Contraforce. The game is packed with secrets that reward exploration. From hidden bonus icons to power-ups tucked away in high corners, the game encouraged you to use your jump height and 8-way aiming to interact with the environment. It's not just about reaching the end, it's about finding the optimal way to get there. The visual style is also distinct. It's a mix of prehistoric jungles and biomechanical rot. The NES port does an amazing job of translating the arcade slime and grime look with a limited colour palette. The backgrounds feel alive and the enemies have a squishy, organic look that sets it apart from the clean look of the typical Nintendo published titles. Toki's underrated because its protagonist is intentionally clunky. People mistake Toki's slow walking speed for bad design, but it's actually the game's greatest strength, as it forced you to engage with level design enemy patterns. It's a polished, quirky and deeply satisfying arcade port that proves you don't need to be fast to be a hero. Panic Restaurant. Released by Taito in the final years of the NES, Panic Restaurant is a victim of terrible timing and a small print run. Because it came out just as the world is moving on to the 16-bit era, it became a rare collector's item, but behind that high price tag is a really good game. It's one of the most creative, bizarre and mechanically tight platformers on the system. You play as the elderly Chef Cookie, whose restaurant's been seized by the evil Ref Odeur. To get his kitchen back, Cookie has to fight through food that has come to life, because that makes complete sense. It's a side-scrolling platform where your primary weapon is a frying pan. You can upgrade to a giant spoon, a plate shield or a massive pogo fork. The food is the enemy theme here. You're not just fighting monsters, you're fighting flying pizzas, bouncing hamburgers and murderous microwave ovens. Panic Restaurant feels like a high-budget cartoon transformed into a video game, featuring a level of detail that the NES games never achieved. Instead of the standard jump and stomp, Cookie uses culinary tools. The frying pan has a short range but high speed, while the spoon provides a wider arc. The pogo fork is a standout. It allows for, of course, DuckTales style pogo jumping, letting you bounce off enemies to reach high secrets, and it makes the combat feel tactile and varied. Chef Cookie's one of the most expressive protagonists on the NES. When he walks, his mustache bounces, when he takes damage, his hat flies off and he genuinely looks panicked. The enemies are also equally impressive. Watching a chicken leg run at you or a carrot try and stab you is genuinely funny, and it definitely has that Saturday morning cartoon vibe better than almost any other licensed game. Between levels you play a slot machine game to earn extra lives and power-ups. Unlike most bonus stages that feel like filler, this one's vital. It creates a rewarding gambling hook that keeps you investing and collecting coins throughout the main levels, turning the economy of the game into a fun meta challenge. The boss fights are legendary for their weirdness. You'll square off against a giant flying toaster that shoots toast at you, a massive bowl of soup with a sentient face, and even a possessed microwave. These fights aren't just for mashing the attack, they require clever positioning and timing, pushing the NES's big sprite capabilities without flickering. Panic Restaurant is just a one-sitting game. It doesn't overstay its welcome with filler levels of frustrating NES hard spikes. The difficulty curve is gentle but rewarding, making it one of those few games of the year that you actually want to beat multiple times just to enjoy the flow of the levels. The game also gets progressively weirder. You start in a kitchen, moving through a garden of giant vegetables, and eventually end up in a freezer world, because that makes total sense. The backgrounds are vibrant and use a soft colour palette that was rare for the system, making the whole experience feel like a fever dream in a 5-star kitchen. Panic Restaurant is underrated because it was a ghost in the market. Most people only know it as an expensive eBay listing, but it deserves to be known as one of the most charming, innovative, and technical proficient platformers Sega or Nintendo has ever hosted. It's a chef's kiss of a game that designs that the NES was still capable of magic even at the end of its life. And finally, Fantasy Zone. Originally a Sega arcade powerhouse, Fantasy Zone is often overlooked on the NES because it was an unlicensed port published by Tengen. It's a game that looks like a candy-coated dream but plays like a high-octane dogfight. It proved that a shooter doesn't need to be dark and gritty to be absolutely punishing. You control Opa Opa, a sentient living spaceship with wings and feet, as he travels through the Fantasy Zone to stop a group of interplanetary invaders and find his lost father. It's a Defender-style free-scrolling shooter. You can fly left or right in a wheel in a looping stage, and to finish a level you must destroy a series of stationary base generators. The economy here is the hook. Destroyed enemies drop coins, which are used to buy upgrades from a flying shot balloon that floats in the level. Fantasy Zone hides a deep strategic upgrade system and a brutal difficulty curve behind a facade of pink clouds and smiling enemies. Most NES shooters like Gradius gives you power-ups based on specific drops. In Fantasy Zones, you're the consumer. You have to decide, do I buy the twin bombs for better ground coverage, or do I invest in big wings for better speed? Because weapons have a limited time use, you have to manage your spending carefully, making it feel like a proto-roguelike. In 1987, most NES games were dominated by browns, greens and blacks. Fantasy Zone exploded with pastels, pinks, teals and bright yellows. It looked completely different from anything else on the shelf. The NES port did an incredible job of capturing the arcade's living colouring book aesthetic despite their hardware's limited colour palette. Unlike 4-scrolling shooters where the screen pushes you forward, Fantasy Zone gives you total control. You can turn around, retreat and tackle on the base of whichever order you want. This adds a layer of exploration to the shooter genre, as you have to hunt down every base while dodging fire from all sides. And the boss designs in this game are great. You'll face giant woodblock robots, flower-like cannons and a massive screen-filling beam pod. Each one requires a specific pattern of movement and a specific weapon choice to defeat, turning every end-of-stage encounter into a puzzle shooter hybrid. And Opa Opa isn't just a ship, he has little legs, which is goddamn awesome. If you fly close to the ground, he lands and starts walking. While it sounds useless, it actually changes your hitbox and allows for precise movement through narrow ground passages. It's a small, quirky detail that gives the character far more personality than a generic spaceship. The big wings and jet engine upgrades make Opa Opa incredibly fast, so fast that he becomes hard to control. As the game rewards speed running the bases, but the faster you go, the more likely you're going to be slamming into a stray bullet or a wandering enemy. It's a constant exhilarating gamble with your own reflexes. Fantasy Zone on the NES is underrated because it was a Sega game on a Nintendo console, often lost in the shuffle of the console wars. It's a vibrant, imaginative and deeply strategic shooter that trades the macho vibes of Contra for a whimsical psychedelic challenge, and it's a cute 'em up with teeth. And that's it, more underrated games for the NES. What do you think of this list? Did you play any of them growing up, and are there ones I still need to talk about? Put them in the comments below. And as I said at the beginning of the video, please give this a like and a hype because that is what helps really grows the channel. And I'll see everyone wherever you get your podcasts from because it's episode 200 and I'd really love to see you there. Until then, I'll see everyone on Friday for another video. You all take care of yourself. My name's been Danny. Bye bye.